Most people don't notice the exact moment things begin to feel slightly different. It doesn't arrive as pain. It doesn't interrupt your day. It doesn't even ask for your attention. It shows up quietly, in the space between what you expect your body to do and how it actually responds. You sit up in bed the way you always have. You place your feet down the way you've done for decades. You reach for the wall, the chair, the door frame, without thinking. And yet, for a brief second, something feels just a little out of sync. Not wrong, just not exactly the same. The space hasn't changed, but your body meets it differently. And most of the time, you move on before fully noticing. Because life continues, the morning continues, and everything still works. But if you pause, if you really pay attention to those first quiet interactions between your body and the world around you, you might begin to notice something subtle, a small delay, a tiny adjustment, a moment where your body seems to check, confirm, and then continue. It's not weakness, it's a different response. And these small responses, especially in the morning, often reveal more than we expect. Not as problems, but as signals. Signals that your body is doing something very precise, something intelligent, something that often goes unnoticed unless you slow down enough to see it. If you're someone who pays attention to small changes in your body, consider liking and subscribing if this video speaks to you. Because today, we're not talking about dramatic changes. We're looking at the smallest ones, the kind that happen in 3 seconds, the kind that feel almost invisible, but over time, shape how confidently and smoothly you move through your day. It begins in the quietest place of all, right where your back leaves the mattress. Richard had been waking up at the same time for years. No alarm needed, just a quiet, natural shift as the light moved through the curtains and his body followed. He would open his eyes, take a breath, and sit up. Simple, automatic, familiar. But one morning, as he began to rise, something almost unnoticeable happened. His back lifted from the mattress, but the rest of his body didn't quite follow at the same pace. Not enough to stop him. Not enough to cause concern. But enough to create a brief, almost invisible pause. As if his body needed just a second longer to organize itself. He sat there, upright, but not fully arrived. It's a strange feeling. You're in position, but your body hasn't completely caught up to it yet. So you wait, just a second, maybe 2, and then everything aligns. It's not weakness. It's a different response. Over time, the way your muscles coordinate with each other can shift slightly. Not in strength, but in timing. The core muscles, the lower back, the hips, they don't always engage in perfect sync the moment you move, especially after stillness, especially in the morning. Your body is recalibrating, reconnecting, reconfirming where everything is in space. And if you move too quickly through that moment, you skip that recalibration. Richard didn't think much of it at first. But one day, instead of pushing through, he placed his hand gently on the mattress beside him, paused, stayed still for 2 seconds, and let his body arrive fully before standing. It was subtle, but the difference was immediate, more grounded, more stable, more complete. The space hadn't changed, but his body met it differently. And in that small moment, something important began to shift. Margaret always liked the feeling of her feet touching the floor in the morning. It was her way of starting the day, a quiet, grounding moment. But recently, she noticed something she couldn't quite describe. Her feet would touch the floor, but the sensation didn't feel immediate anymore. There was a tiny delay, a fraction of a second where the contact was there, but the awareness of it lagged behind. She would stand, but not fully feel the floor right away. It wasn't numbness, it wasn't pain. It was more like the signal took a longer path to arrive. So she found herself doing something new, without realizing it at first. She would place her feet down, and stay still. Just for a moment, letting the sensation come in, letting her body confirm, yes, this is the ground, this is where you are. It's not weakness, it's a different response. Your feet are your primary connection to the environment. They constantly send information to your brain about balance, pressure, and position. But over time, the speed of that communication can shift slightly. Not dramatically, just enough to create a brief mismatch between action and perception. And when that happens, your body adapts. It slows down, just a little, to make sure everything is accurate before moving forward. Margaret started to trust that pause. Instead of stepping immediately, she would give herself 2 seconds. Feel the floor. Let her weight settle. Then move. And her steps became smoother, more certain. Not because she was stronger, but because she allowed her body to fully register where she was. The floor hadn't changed, but her body met it differently. Daniel lived alone in a small apartment he had known for over 20 years. Every wall, every corner, every surface, familiar. Especially the hallway outside his bedroom. Each morning, he would step out, reach his hand lightly against the wall, and walk toward the kitchen. It was effortless. Until one morning, his hand touched the wall, but instead of gliding forward immediately, it paused. Just slightly, as if his body needed confirmation before continuing. He didn't lose balance. He didn't stumble. But there was a brief moment where his hand stayed in place, longer than usual. Then, he moved. It's not weakness. It's a different response. Your hands do more than touch. They guide, they confirm, they provide your body with a reference point in space. And over time, your body may begin to rely on that confirmation a bit more than before. Not because something is failing, but because your internal system is becoming more precise, more careful. That slight pause is your body asking, "Am I where I think I am?" Daniel began to notice it more often, so he made a small adjustment. Instead of brushing the wall quickly, he placed his hand there, firmly, held it for 2 seconds, then stepped forward, and something changed. His movement felt more connected, more intentional, more stable. The hallway hadn't changed, but his body met it differently. Linda shared a home with her daughter and grandson. Mornings were busy, movement was constant. But in the quiet moments before everyone woke up, she had her routine. Step out of bed, walk around the corner, pass through the narrow space between the dresser and the door. Simple, familiar. But one morning, as she moved through that space, she hesitated. Not consciously, her body did, just a fraction of a second, as if it needed to measure the space before passing through. She didn't bump into anything. She didn't misstep. But she noticed the hesitation, the tiny pause before movement. It's not weakness. It's a different response. Navigating tight spaces requires coordination between your perception of distance and your body's movement through it. And over time, that coordination can include a brief moment of recalibration. Your body checks. How much space is there? Where am I in relation to it? How should I move through it? Linda started to slow down just slightly in that moment. Not dramatically, just enough to let that internal check happen. She would pause at the edge of the space, feel it, then move through. And everything felt smoother, more natural, more aligned. The space hadn't changed, but her body met it differently. James had always been a steady walker, not fast, not slow, just consistent. Each morning, he would step out onto his porch and begin his short walk down the driveway. But recently, he noticed something in the very first step. The moment he began to move, his body didn't immediately fall into rhythm. There was a slight mismatch. His intention to walk and his body's readiness to follow weren't perfectly aligned. So his first step felt uncertain, just for a second. Then everything smoothed out. It's not weakness. It's a different response. Starting movement requires coordination between intention, balance, and muscle activation. And in the morning, after a period of stillness, your system needs a moment to synchronize. If you rush that first step, you move before everything is fully aligned. James began to change one small thing. Before stepping, he would stand still, feel his weight, let his body settle, then begin. And the difference was clear. His steps flowed more naturally, more confidently, not because anything had been fixed, but because he allowed his body to prepare. The ground hadn't changed, but his body met it differently. These moments are easy to miss. They don't interrupt your day. They don't demand attention. They don't announce themselves as problems. But they are there. Quiet, consistent, precise. They are your body's way of adjusting, not losing ability, but refining how it responds. Not becoming weaker, but becoming more deliberate. The morning is when this is most visible, because everything begins from stillness. Your body has been at rest, disconnected from movement, and as you begin your day, it reconnects, recalibrates, realigns. If you move too quickly, you skip that process. If you allow it a few seconds, everything becomes smoother, more coordinated, more stable. These are not exercises. They are not routines. They are moments. Small alignment pauses. 2 seconds. Sometimes 3. Where you let your body confirm, this is where I am. This is where I'm going. This is how I move. And over time, these moments matter. Because small misalignments, repeated over and over, can accumulate. But small corrections, repeated gently, can do the same. In a positive way. They create consistency. They create confidence. They create a sense that your movements fit the space around you. And that feeling is what supports independence. Not speed, not strength alone, but alignment between your body and your environment. So tomorrow morning, you don't need to change everything. Just notice one moment. When you sit up, when your feet touch the floor, when your hand reaches a surface, when you step into a space, when you begin to walk, pause, just briefly. Let your body catch up to the moment and see what changes. Because often, nothing is wrong. Something is simply different. And when you recognize that difference, without rushing past it, you begin to move in a way that feels more natural again, more connected, more steady, more... Have you ever felt that something familiar suddenly feels slightly different in the morning? If you have, you're not alone. And if this reflection resonated with you, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. I'd love to hear about the small moments you've noticed, the ones that don't seem important at first, but stay with you. Thank you for spending this time here, wishing you a day that feels steady, grounded, and quietly in sync with every step you take.